Even if you won't, it will probably still have an impact on your work as developers, which is of course the Apple Watch. You recently said, I'm going to try and test it and see if it changes my life. Would you be very disappointed if your life would stay pretty much the same?
Yes, like some other products I've tried in the past. Yeah, if I try the Apple Watch and it doesn't really change my computer life, I will be maybe not very disappointed. What would the watch have to do to change my life? It would have to make things noticeably easier in ways that I like. How efficient is an app? Yes, if apps are too cumbersome, more than they should be, too many steps, things that bother me that are in the way, lots of little decisions to make and look at, I hate it. I want things just simple and direct to the solution. Of course, in my own life with my smartphone, I've gotten in the habit of I don't like structure. I don't like to tap here and run these apps and follow all these procedures to get something to work on my smartphone. I have an idea in my head and I can just speak it one way like a human being, and I like to just speak whenever I can to do things with my smartphones, whether they're Android or Apple. Anytime I'm in a place and I can speak instead of having to follow a set of procedures. I love it. I want that so badly. I really want to do it every chance I get. So I'm hoping that the watch gets that kind of invisibility a lot. At Apple, we always had this idea. It was brought to us by a guy named Jeff Raskin. He came to Steve Jobs and I. He said, you put a lot of work into a product, a lot of software, and you make it work in natural human ways, and then computer experts can use it, but non-computer experts can also use it. And it's the rest of us, the non-computer experts, that you've really got to reach and make everything work for it. And I want to deal with life. Here's the human versus technology. Which is more important? I have traced Apple's history, and in Apple's history, generally, if you make things, the human, more important than the technology, you put the work in to make the technology work in natural human ways. Well, personal has had a lot of means and development through the whole state, starting with the first personal computers. And at first it just meant you could kind of take it out of a box. You didn't have to build it. You didn't have to be an expert. Pull it out of a box and use it right away, very simply. And that made it personal and a computer. Over time, the computers all got smaller and smaller and closer to us, easier to carry, much more powerful. They got up to where we could handwrite with our own handwriting with the Newton message pad from Apple at one point. You could even click a button on that product. You could type a note to yourself. The note that I typed was Tuesday, Sarah, dentist, Tuesday, 2 p.m. And I clicked assist, it opened up the calendar, it put the word dentist in on Tuesday at 2 p.m. and it grabbed Sarah from my contact list. I wrote a note to a human as a reminder and it understood me. And that changed my life forever. I often get asked, what's your favorite product of all time? Sometimes there were times I might have said the Apple II or the iPhone or the iPhone 5 or 4. And you know what I say now? I say it's the App Store every time someone asks me, because I look at my own life. What has changed my life and the way I do things more than any computer ever? And it really was all the third-party apps that do so much with the connection to the internet. So, I call that part of, that's personal, because it's close to me. It's what I do and how I live my life and what I do. I look at the end of the day, what 30 apps did I use today? And if it's only 30. And each one of those apps was critical, the most important app in my life at the minute that I used it.
Back in the 80s, you were a high school teacher, teaching kids.
Before high school, I was teaching young children, only because it had been a lifetime goal of mine. Just because Apple is successful, you don't have to change the person that you are and what you want to do.
What kind of things did you teach them?
I thought, at first I thought, wow, what am I going to teach them? I wasn't sure. Computers. It's going to be computers. I'm going to supply all the resources for the class. And should I teach them how computers work inside? No. Because some of us want to grow up mathematical, scientific. Some of us want to understand computer science and logic and how you can put gates together and make complicated things like processors. That's the few of us that I am. But I don't want to say everybody should be like me. So I said, how can I help everybody in this 5th grade class, one class of a public school? how can I help them all? I will teach them how to use the computer for what they really need to do in their classwork. How to use graphs and timelines for history, presentations, how to present things well. It was the early days, you know, when we had the mouse-based computers. The words are one thing, but you know what? The pictures and the way to convey things to the human mind, it was a communication tool. It was the computer more than a thinking tool.
What would you teach them today?
I think I would teach them the same thing today, except the tools are much different. I'd probably teach them how to quickly, you know, you have subjects in school that haven't changed yet. If someday we are lucky that our machines get so smart, we have one teacher per student and it's a machine, then every student can go in their own direction. But right now they pretty much in school have to learn the same mathematics and science and history and literature and writing, the same as every other student at the same speed. And I would probably teach them, well, more than anything else we know, you know, since the internet was here, and Google, you know, how to research and get your best information, and still how to use your tools to put it in a presentable form. Now that's creativity, that's creation. When you sit down and you write a paper, that's total creativity. When you look at mathematics and you come up with, here's an algebraic reduction, you worked and you created something. When you edit a movie, you have created. You're being really productive. If you take music and you play some stuff in GarageBand and create some music with it, you're being creative. And I believe in creativity. People thinking for themselves, not just memorizing facts, is one of the best things a computer can do. Steve Jobs often used an example of mankind was so advanced that the computer was the bicycle for the mind. The bicycle was a tool that let human beings run faster than any other animal for a certain amount of energy, and the computer was going to let us take our minds further than we ever could before. And that means creating, not just sort of using it to talk to friends and blah, blah, blah. And so I would probably still focus classes today, if I was teaching, around a lot of creative enterprises, you know, from writing, but gathering the best material from the internet. And I don't even care that much about plagiarism, as long as you understand it, and putting big chunks together is what it's all about. Look how we design products now. You pick a chip from Intel, and you pick a little radio chip from Qualcomm, and you put them all, and you design some antennas, but a lot of it's just putting together pieces that other people have created, rather than doing your own creation. But I would teach, I would want kids to come out to have a way of thinking with their mind, because that extends to other problems in life. Young child's eyes, you know, 6 months old, 1 year old, excited to learn everything there is. By the time you get to school, you get told, no, you can't open the drawers. There's 30 of you in the class, and if all of you are opening different drawers, we can't hold a class. You all have to be patient, listen, and learn together. Your behavior gets so controlled, it fights creativity. When behavior is controlled and you're not allowed to, I even think that a little bit of misbehavior is part of an element of the most creative people I've met, including the founders of a lot of these top companies that we respect so much. And the greatest engineers we had at Apple too, they always had a little bit of that misbehavior playing around, almost a hacking mentality, if you will.
Are you looking forward to artificial intelligence taking care of us or not?
Well, my whole life I've been looking forward to artificial intelligence. I did not think it would ever happen. I did not think it would ever get as close to it as we are to this day. The human mind knows how to organize problems and come up with a method to solve them. And we know how to program the computer. The computer doesn't know how to program itself. It just has brute force, high speed, but it doesn't really think for itself. And I thought, you know what? We're never going to make a computer like a human brain. I looked at the early artificial intelligence projects going on at Stanford Artificial Intelligence Research when I was in high school. I would go visit, and they had a machine that could pick up a red ball and put it in a red container. And I thought, this is not intelligence like the human mind. This is just some very, very simple sets of rules. And I didn't realize that those sets of rules, when you multiply them, make them more complex, and make millions of sets of rules like that, eventually maybe you do get up to the human mind. We don't really know that yet. We don't know how the mind is wired. Well, a transistor was one electronic neuron. And then by the time I was out of college, it was 2,000 electronic neurons you could put on a chip. And now you can put 10 billion And if it keeps on growing for a few more generations of Moore's Law, yeah, the machines might get that smart. But I think we're at the end of Moore's Law because we're storing ones and zeros in the densest form of memory made to this day, NAND flash memory. We're storing ones and zeros in 8 electrons. Electrons are pretty darn tiny. You can't manipulate electrons very easily. So I think we might be at sort of close to the end. It's going to slow down, and we don't have that many generations of Moore's Law left to go. So the machines won't quite equal us in brain power, they'll just seem to.
What about quantum computers?
What about quantum computers? That's the trick question, because I don't know enough to say, oh my gosh, yes, quantum computers can theoretically do things so many times more than our existing computers. First of all, I started out by saying that intelligence is not how fast a computer is. A quantum computer might be 1,000 times faster. What if it was 1,000,000 times faster? That little chess program I wrote was not going to get solved if the computer could do a billion things a second, a trillion, a zillion a second. It wasn't going to solve the problem. It needed a good approach still. And we still haven't solved that part of artificial intelligence. And hopefully we don't get there. Quantum computing, yeah, it's like, who knows? It's been applied. There have been some research projects with tens of thousands of dollars of equipment, but it hasn't replaced anything useful yet that you can speak of. Here's something in my life, some general facet that computers help me with that quantum computing has actually succeeded at yet. It's having a lot of trouble getting there, so who knows? Maybe we'll have something beyond today's type of computers made out of chips. Maybe we will have something different, but it's hard to put your bets on quantum computing yet. I know I don't know enough to say.
Do you have any other idea apart from the end of Moore's Law to stop making computers that one day supersede us?
Okay, now that a lot of the smart people of the world, like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk of Tesla and Bill Gates and founders of Google, are talking about the big danger being in artificial intelligence and computers getting smarter than us. Science fiction writers wrote about it 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but now it's real scientists that have a good method to predicting where we're going to go, and it's a scary thought. And they're starting to say, oh, we should make sure that all of the computer equipment that we create will have a sense of niceness, of goodness, of taking care of humans and the earth and the environment and all that good stuff. But I'm thinking, once you get intelligent, you start thinking for yourself. You think independently. And if we've got all the machines thinking for themselves, eventually they're going to just decide, oh, here's some better rules we can follow, and maybe we don't even need the humans that much because they're going to decide it based on their own economics. So, I'm talking about maybe 200 years from now, when every little computer making decisions, running a company, sends out to other computers and little robots that drive around and bring supplies to be manufactured to build the new computers and make their babies. The ones that, right down to the machines that go out and dig ores, dig in the quarries to get materials and then process the materials. Everything's going to be run by computers in 200 years if that happens. They would think for themselves and start thinking, do we really need these humans? Or they're just pets, we're just going to feed them pet food.